Welcome to Fyght Talk. My name is Christian Young. But I don't know y'all. Welcome to Fyght Talk. My name is Christian Young. So today we're going to talk a little bit about vendors. Vendor selection can be a fairly interesting, and when I say interesting, I'm going to put it in quotations, activity. Because a lot of times you're trying to buy a service that you're not a professional at, so it's tough to really find the right balance. But I have a few tips for you when it comes to selecting your vendors. First, be very clear about what it is that you need. Spend a little bit of time understanding the skills that you would like to have, and then also what are your expectations of service. Then, when you're looking for your vendors, select a few. You need to go through and make sure that you give yourself options when it comes to a vendor, because there's going to be varying levels of service depending on who you select. Also, you want to spend some time actually interviewing your vendors, having a conversation with them to understand if they can actually provide the services that you're looking for. If you need some assistance in developing your questions, using the internet is always a great tool to make sure that you're including certain questions that you may not have even thought of. When I was looking for vendors for my business initially, I did spend a lot of time on Google and the broader internet just asking, what should I ask a bookkeeper? What should I ask a tax professional? What do I need to know about a marketing plan so that I can make sure that the vendors who are providing me services actually can provide the services that I look for? And also, during the interviews, do not be afraid to be very upfront about the services, get their perspective on how they deliver services, gain an understanding on whether or not they're insured, if it's an insurable vendor, and then also understand whether or not they're appropriately licensed. Once you've done your interviews and you've made your selection, what you want to do is make sure that you establish some level of governance with your vendors. Do not be afraid of a probationary period. And also do not be afraid of terminating your vendor relationship if they're unable to fulfill the promises that you need. As long as you make sure that you are appropriately communicating with your vendors, your relationships can be very successful, but you do have to understand that not everyone is a professional, even though they are vendors. For my real estate investment group, when we were developing our operational agreement, we hired a lawyer, and we went through an entire process because we, of course, were overprepared, as a bunch of type A's can be sometimes, myself included. And we had like lists of questions, and we ran an interview process. We checked references. We called to see how other people had been satisfied with their services. But the mistake that we made is that the vendor we hired did not have significant experience in actually writing operational agreements. They were a lawyer, but we didn't really focus in on the fact that they didn't have that level of experience, especially a multi-partner operational agreement. So we thought, this should work out. And fast forward maybe 2 to 3 months later, we had to make the decision to part ways. And it was a bit tough because, you don't want to be hurting people's feelings, but we had to have like a team meeting and say, okay, so like, are we paying for feelings or are we paying for service? And once we had that discussion, we were able to successfully part ways with our vendor and find the right one for the types of services that we needed. Now, it wasn't the easiest process, but it was a very worthwhile learning experience for all of us. So today I brought one of my favorite vendor professionals here to talk about finding a vendor. So we're going to be talking with Sharifa. She's the founder and CEO of 137 LLC. And good morning.
Good morning.
And can you tell us a little bit about your business?
I can. So 137 is really focused on kind of real estate investing. We are new, so we have a property or so under our belt. It's really nascent. And the goal, right, one day is to have properties, multifamilies, parking lots, apartment buildings, just any kind of thing that has to do with real estate, like all over the US. So that's kind of the vision for the future. But for now, we're doing our baby steps. So yeah, excited to be here.
So you're in a building stage, which is
Yes.
always an interesting time for an entrepreneur.
Yes.
And then also you have the special designation of being a parapreneur, meaning that you have a full-time career in corporate America while also trying to run and stand up your business.
Yes.
And part of one of the things that I found so interesting about your business is that you require a lot of vendors.
It's very true.
Can you tell us a little bit about your vendor process?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So I'll back up a bit and then kind of address your question.
Sure.
I grew up in real estate watching my dad like build houses from scratch, mostly residential. I've seen that process from end to end and what that looks like, right? If you are developing and then you have all these vendors coming in. So I learned some lessons from just kind of being nosy and just sitting there listening about what it takes to have the right vendors, for better or worse, what licenses are needed, how to properly do the process, how to maybe improperly do the process. And so for me, when I started this business and I do some work with my mom, we do work together on some things. It was really about creating processes that make things easier. And so doing the work in the front end, right? So whether that be you're sourcing vendors, you're looking at their references, you're talking to them to figure out what it is that they have experience in. You're actually getting photos or video of the work they've done, right? In real estate, things are tangible. You're doing background checks on the vendors. You're setting up your contracts so they make sense in terms of, I'm not giving you all this money up front. I know you want it all, but you haven't done anything yet. So I think it's fair to give you maybe 25%, or we might have those negotiations, right? And then there's milestones along the way. And then I think another thing that's key in real estate is licensing. There's a lot of unlicensed activity that happens, and that's cool. Insurance from their part, right? Like if you do something in my property and like mess it up, you drill a hole through the wall to the other side, who's paying for that? Not me. So I think some of those things are lessons learned. I'm big on people being on time, people doing what they say they're going to do, or if you can't, you need to communicate. And so I think in the real estate world, that is it's a gem if you find somebody.
So you mentioned lessons learned.
Yes.
So I'm assuming that you have some lessons that that you have learned over the course of engaging vendors. Can you share a couple of tips that you definitely stand by now that you've kind of lived the experience?
Yeah. Wow, so many. I'll keep it short. I think that sometimes pay what people are worth. It's worth it. So I am not so stringent. Like if somebody's quoting me a price that's like thousands of dollars less than another, for the other person, you have an idea what things should cost. But if somebody comes highly recommended, like for my house that I live in, I went with somebody that was a little bit more, but amazing work, did what he said he was going to do. The team was there. So sometimes I think it's worth paying the extra to get somebody that's good. So that's one. I think a second one is don't be afraid to stop and find someone else. I think I've had an experience with a property manager who was managing our property, and things started off good and then it just went left, and we were under contract for a year, and I was just like, well, you kind of giving grace, and at the same time money's leaving your pocket. And so I just had to have the epiphany of like, get the lawyer, break the contract, do what you need to do, so that you can get to the other side. It's okay to start over. So that's two. I think those are the two main ones I would say for now.
So then on the topic of grace, because this is one that I know I've experienced in my own business, and then also since we happen to also have a business together, we have experienced that right at the beginning with not necessarily understanding the nuances between the different types of services that someone can offer. And that lack of understanding of the nuances resulted in us kind of having a bit of a back and forth with that vendor. How do you go about informing them that their grace has run out?
Great question. I think the best way is to be direct and say what you need today, get it on the table. In that scenario that you're talking about, we were obligated under a contract. The vendor was not doing what they said they would be doing, and it was taking a lot longer than it should have. And so I think for me in that situation with us, the lesson learned was don't be afraid to just say, thank you for your services. This is not working for me. Here are the reasons why. If you, if things need to be in writing, especially when it relates to contracts, you didn't do this X, Y, and Z, and we're going to go ahead and release you. Take care of yourself. I mean, maybe don't say that part, but, take care. My favorite thing. But, just get it out there. Make sure things are in writing. Everything should always be in writing. And then, move on to the next.
How important is it that you know who you are as a client before you engage a vendor?
You're hitting me with the questions today. I think it's so important, especially, using the scenario of our joint business together. It's 4 of us, and we are all background type A consultants, but very different personality types. I'm a questioner. I want to ask you A through Z and then go back to A and do like 1A plus 2. Like I want all the questions, and then, others are not, right? And there's a range. And so I think it is important to do some self-reflection, lessons you learn around the way about how you work, and inform people. Like I will tell people, here's my background from a work perspective. This is the way I work from a background in real estate. So there's some things that like, I just need you to know that I know before we like go here. And so like, let's, cause you have, as a vendor, they have a right to say no, thank you as well. So I think that's very important.
No, I think that one of the things that really struck me in our business endeavors was the fact that we had to literally sit and be like, now we know how we are. So there's no point in us even playing games and pretending like we are not special as a group collectively and individually. So let's just make sure that we're all on the same page. Another thing that I think that was really helpful for me was making sure that we had a very clear understanding of what the vendor was supposed to be doing.
Yes.
So a lot of research.
Yes.
And as someone who does a lot of research, can you tell us about your process?
Yeah, I for better or worse, like you said, you have to know yourself. It's who I am. And so I will do all the Googling. I will do all the looking in the trades. I will do there's a lot of, in the instance of real estate, a lot of groups, social groups, industry groups that like I will ask, have you worked with this person? Do you know this person? Is it a referral from someone that I trust or I've seen work? I will background your insurance. I will talk to the people you worked with and did work on their property. Sometimes I'll be like, can I see it with my own eyes? Because pictures can lie. There's a thing called AI. And so I think all of that for me, maybe some people would say it's over the top, but it makes me feel better about when you're spending this money and you can't get it back, and time is money in real estate. So,
and then you just actually mentioned AI is real. How much has that impacted how you move forward with vendors, particularly when there's a visual aspect or a tangible aspect to their work?
Yeah, no. I think it's not something I like fully thought through, honestly. I think for me, I'm very literal. So like a photo, a video. I think most contractors are probably not yet at the place where they are, dreaming up stuff on AI. Doesn't mean it won't go there. In real estate, I don't think that's for the small, general contractor. He's probably, or she is probably not doing that, or they are not probably doing that. But I think it is something in terms of reviews, because those are easily like auto-generated. I think it's in terms of, visuals of work that's been done. I need you to back it up, or I need to see something a little bit more.
And then switching over to thinking about it from your perspective based on your professional experience. So one of the things that you didn't mention is that you are very well versed in the customer experience.
That's true.
And as a small business owner, how have you noted the differences in customer experience across vendor cycles? And what things do you need to just give grace on versus expect?
It is so hard when your day job is literally improving the customer experience, literally making it easier for people to get the services and products they need, and to flip that over into a space where it's not always the case. You asked about grace first. I think it's understanding the industry that you're in. I think it's understanding the norms of the industry, and then like real estate, for example, and investments. Like a lot of those things are predicated by people's relationships with you. So if I'm a contractor and I have 4 other people I work with, and as their vendor that net me $500,000 every year because they're just turning properties, and then here I come and I'm like, I have my one property, I can give you like $10,000. You're gonna prioritize that other person, and so on my side of things, it feels like you're not responding enough. The experience is not great. Maybe you deprioritize your workers coming to my house because the person that's spending $500,000 with you needs something now. And I think it's understanding like where you draw the line, and I think everything is situational, right? You have to build that buffer into the timeline for the work that you need to get done. So
can a vendor ever come back? Like if they have effectively torn their undergarments with you, i.e. failed in some way, shape, or form to provide the services that you're contracting.
Yeah.
Is it possible for them to redeem themselves and come back?
Probably not. I will elaborate and say it may depend on the level of egregiousness that has occurred. On the scale of you were supposed to do work for me, we were engaged in a contract and you left me high and dry. Absolutely not. On a scale of where I've had happen before, we're talking about you come in and do something, you get busy doing something else, and would I give you another chance? Maybe yes, in that instance, because I understand things happen. But if you are in something and you have messed something up and cost me money, like there's too many fish in the sea. I'm so sorry.
Now, as far as all the fish in the sea, it can give you what I call like it can be a little overwhelming. Like
Absolutely.
There are a lot of people, there's a lot of YouTube videos on how things should be done properly. There's all of these competing perspectives, particularly like once you get, the contractor space is one thing, but then if you start thinking about the professional services, so your lawyers, your accountants, your doctors, if you need one for something. How do you effectively sort through that? Or what would you recommend to do to sort through it so that you don't get like that overflow?
I've felt so overwhelmed, and sometimes you just pause because you're like, it's too many people. Sometimes you look at reviews online and it's like some person saying they're the best thing that ever happened, and then in the same review, the worst thing, left me high and dry, lost money, like scandal. So I think like a couple of things. One, I do read through that person that like goes to the end of the review thing and like clicks to the next page, and then like filters on the like person who got 1 star. I read in depth, right? So you can kind of triage and say like, okay, if there's like all these people that said that person's great and there's like 1 or 2 people, that happens in business. Okay, so maybe you're okay. I think the other thing that's really important to do, and I think you mentioned it, is really immerse yourself in what the industry of what you're doing. So in real estate, there are so many communities, there's so many in-person networking events, there's so many ways to get plugged in that you can start to reference, hey, do you have somebody that you would recommend? And like I'm currently in something now where there's literally like an ongoing Google Sheets list of like each vendor that people have used that they're like, I would refer this person for all kinds of things. So I think it's important to spend the time to just like dive in and be a part of the community of which industry you are trying to grow your business.
So I think that what I'm kind of hearing is a few key points. Number one is do your research. Number one, well, I say number one twice, but it is what it is.
1 and 1.
One and one.
That's right.
So do your research, understand who you are as a customer.
Absolutely.
Understand your baseline expectations on that vendor, especially if they're in an industry that you're unfamiliar with. So familiarize yourself with the industry. Read. Interview. Check some references. If necessary, look at the photos. So all the things. And if you were giving advice to someone who was just starting out and who literally has like the entire world of vendors to even begin to delve into, what advice would you give them as far as starting?
So I'm going to pin that. And then there's one more thing I want to add on what you were just saying, because I think you always summarize what I'm saying so perfectly. It's the benchmarking, as we would say in consulting. You need to understand how much things cost and how long things take. Generally, right? It's like if I want somebody to come, I don't know, fix the kitchen sink, is that like an hour job typically? Is it a 5-hour job? Does it cost $100? Does it cost $1,000? So you can better like source your vendors, right? And then there's something probably in the middle. So that was my add-on. But to your question around advice that I would give somebody like as they're starting off, right, in selecting vendors, I would say 2 things. One, do your research, but like things that are gonna make mistakes, it's okay, right? Like you try and have, like you said, use the internet, find out like just some general baselines for things so you know what you're talking about, so you can talk the language and just like dive in. Like I'm an analysis paralysis type of girl, but at some point you just have to try it and then you adjust, right? Mistakes happen, you just keep going. And like you said, give yourself grace for those.
One last thing, because you definitely kind of triggered a thought.
Yeah.
Yesterday's price is not today's price.
Yeah.
How, like, contracting can only take you so far with your vendors.
Yeah.
How do you deal with change orders?
It's a very good question. So I'm thinking of it in 2 ways. One, I would say you have to think about each of them individually. Is it a fair change order? Did you tell this person you're just going to have to tighten the pipe under the sink and now they're rebuilding your whole kitchen? Like, then yes, that's probably fair, worth a change order. There are situations where vendors will get you into a place where like they torn everything up and now they're like, oh, we need a change order because of this. It's not really fair. And you're in a place where if you don't do it, now you have to start over. And I think in those instances, you just have to weigh your odds. If they're doing a good job, you might just have to fork over more and then put them on your no-no list next time. And just remember that, right? Like, I think part of doing very specifically for real estate is building in buffers for things that are going to happen. It will be late. It will take twice as long as they said it will. There will be things that they found. So like you build all that into your budget and know that you might have to take a margin loss on this one and then lesson learned. But generally, if it's going to get the job done and you know that they can do it, I'm going to sign it and just note it for later. The other side of things I think are probably repetitive. If I see you going down a path and I'm like, this man is using like a hammer when he should be using a saw, take care of yourself. I'm just going to have to start over. Like I just part of what it is.
Like a thank y'all for coming out situation.
Thank you so much. Take care. Yeah.
Thank you so much for being here today and talking with us a little bit about vendors and your process and how it kind of works for your business. I think that in sharing this, it really helps to translate across multiple businesses because we all will engage vendors at some point, and we just need to be very diligent about our approaches because, you know, the money's not limitless, and you definitely want to make sure that you're getting what you pay for.
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me.